Alright. Really big shoe. Have a little bit to talk about today. First, I want to start off with the previous podcast where I was talking pretty much about the 11 rack. And I forgot to mention some things in that podcast. When I was talking about I have done pretty much everything preset-wise that I can do, I don't mean I've created every sound possible. I definitely have not done that, because there are plenty of sounds that aren't interesting to me. But I forgot to mention the 11rackpresets.com website, and there you'll find about 1,100 more presets that you can download that have been contributed by a bunch of different users of the 11 rack. So between me and that site, you've got over 4,000 presets, plus you have the Sweetwater presets if you bought your 11 rack through Sweetwater. So that's another 100 or 200. I'm not sure what they're up to now. And then there's another site which I can't think of the name, and I think there's some other presets available. So all in all, you have about 5,000 presets available for the 11 rack, which covers pretty much everything. As I mentioned in the last podcast, you can't really cover everything just because of differences in guitars and personal preferences and whatnot. But you can get close and find a preset that's close and then simply tweak it. I'm sure there are sounds out there to be created, but for me to sit down and just start creating more presets, I just get to the point where they just start sounding like something I've already made. So a purpose-built preset is what I will focus on. I think, at least, that's what I'm saying now. I've said this to myself several times before that, I'm not going to create any more presets, and then next thing you know, I've got 2,000 new ones coming out. But that's the plan for now, is to just focus on purpose-built presets, meaning presets that I create after a song has actually been recorded, and then I go back and reamp or something like that. When I first had the idea to start doing like a podcast sort of thing, it was really so I could create semi-interesting content that didn't require a lot of editing. But only 4 episodes in, this is the 5th here, but 4 episodes in, and it has gotten out of hand, the amount of editing I'm doing on those podcasts. I mean, the first one was alright, it was like 7 minutes long, and then the next one was 15 minutes long, and then the 2 after that were both over 20 minutes long, and the amount of editing was insane. I'll throw up an image here on screen so you can see the last editing session I had in Media Composer for the podcast number 4. I mean, it has gotten out of hand, the amount of editing I'm doing, so I'm going to have to start cutting these things down, making them shorter or something. Traditionally, podcasts are audio only, but of course in the past several years, video has been added to them. Any of your popular podcasts are going to have video, like your Joe Rogan podcast, your Anthony Cumia podcast. Tons of podcasts out there that include video, your Windows Weekly podcast. And in my opinion, video just adds another element to, the experience. Makes it a little more interesting. It's all very simple. In my point of view. I mean, I'll listen to podcasts and I won't necessarily always watch what's actually on the screen. I just like to actually include pictures and video clips of what I'm looking at and seeing, just to make things a little more interesting. But I've got to start cutting it down because, like I said, that last editing session was insane. I've created a few new YouTube channels. I'm not going to mention any channel names yet because there's no content up there yet, but I've created a few new channels to be a little more specific on where I can place my content. On this channel here, as I've mentioned, I think in the first podcast, it really started with guitar-centric videos, specifically 11 rack. Then it grew from there to Pro Tools tutorials and plugin tutorials and things like that to show off technology. And then it grew to other things like Windows and Windows Phone. Just basically educational, tutorial-based videos like that. And there's other things I want to do, though, but I don't feel it'd be right to post it on this channel. For instance, like that video I did called Screaming Weenie. Prepare for the worst. Which is it's just a dumb video, but it doesn't really belong on this channel. So I've created a channel that I can do dumb things like that and upload stupid videos, or more creative type videos that don't actually have to do with technology or how to do something. Instead, they're just, this is what it is. You see what I'm saying? I've also created a channel for my band. I'm doing air quotes because it's not actually a band, it's just me, but for metal music that I make. Created a channel for that, and I've created another channel too for some other entertainment things I'm working on that don't really fit into the whole audio video world. But again, I don't have any names yet for the channels, but once I finally start getting content up, I'll mention that here for anybody who's interested. A couple podcasts back, I mentioned IK Multimedia released SampleTank 3 free, which is a free version of SampleTank 3, obviously, as the name implies. And if you have downloaded that, be sure to go back to the IK Multimedia website, log into your account, and download the updated sound banks. Apparently, they're releasing sound banks, different new sound banks every week or so for the next several weeks. So it looks like you'll have to just keep checking back to get more and more sounds. You know, I wouldn't have so much problem. I wouldn't have so much editing. My stupid mouth would work correctly, cooperate with my brain. I make so many mistakes. I've got to edit out all these pauses and uhs and oohs and ahs, and also a bunch of rambling that just goes absolutely nowhere. It's really weird just talking into a microphone with no one around you. I've just got a couple of computer screens and my 11 rack, guitars, just sitting here talking, rambling about, and what have you. It's just a really weird medium I thought I'd explore. You know, it seems to be going fine. This is episode 5. I'll probably do a bunch more of them just to keep things coming, interesting things coming for the channel. You know, I'll talk about the Lamb of God documentary that was released February or so of this year, I believe. And I recently got it a few weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago. If I remember right, it's called As the Palaces Burn, which don't confuse that with the CD of the same name. But it's a really cool documentary that they started out to follow the band around on a tour. I believe it like basically overseas tours to areas of the world where you wouldn't think metal music would be very popular. And they interview a few people, but then of course we all know that Randy got arrested in the Czech Republic from a concert they did in, I think, Prague. So it's a really compelling documentary. It's not as exciting, maybe, at least in the visceral sort of way, as the previous Lamb of God documentaries were, you know, where they're actually having fights with each other in I think, was that Philadelphia that was on, or I don't remember. They sort of blur together. But definitely go back and check out the previous Lamb of God documentaries. They're very interesting just to watch if you're into music, especially if you're into metal. And the latest one, the As the Palaces Burn, as far as I know, that's still only available on Vimeo. So if you just do a Google search, you'll find it. It's not very expensive. You can pay to just stream it or pay to download the HD version, which is what I did. Be sure to check it out, man. Also, I just want to mention a band that I recently discovered. Apparently, they've been out for a while, but I just watched one of their videos on YouTube. They're called Despite, so I'll be sure to link to one of their latest videos. So if you're into metal, check that out as well. Despite is a band from Sweden. They have a really cool sound. They're using 8-string guitars, which is really something I need to get. I've been using 6 strings forever. I had a 7-string at one point. I ended up selling it along with a bunch of other musical stuff, and I got a drum set and everything. I mean, this music store ripped me off. I had like this $1,500 7-string guitar, about $2,000 electronic drum kit, and a bunch of other stuff I traded in for like a $800 drum set, like a real drum set. Boy, they ripped me off, but that's what I wanted at the time, and that's what I got. But I really need to get an 8-string guitar. I just really dig the tones that you can get with the extended range of those lower strings. I've actually been experimenting with using a bass through guitar presets with the 11 rack. I'm getting some pretty cool results from that, but the problem I always come up with is the articulation, because with a bass your strings are so large that to get the articulation that you get with a guitar is sort of tough. I'm still sort of working with that, but that's sort of taking it to an extreme of low end. I actually have a video on YouTube using a bass as a guitar, which was up a few years ago. It's kind of cool. It doesn't sound amazing, but it's just sort of one of those experimental things I like to do. But back to whatever it was I was talking about. Despite, yeah, the band Despite. Check them out. I'll have a link to their latest video. I think it's called As You Bleed or Bleed For Me or something like that. It's a really cool video. Alright, so I believe that is it. Be sure to check out all the links I've mentioned, 11rackpresets.com. You can go to my blog site for other 11rack stuff. Check out the Lamb of God documentary, the Spike Band, and if you have SampleTank 3 free, make sure you have downloaded your updated sound banks. So I believe that's all I got for today, so that is it.
4X, better. 4X, better. 4X. It's all very simple. Better. 4X.
No sugar,
Humbug.